Imagine you're sitting at home when suddenly, bang! 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 3 so-called police officers are at your door, shouting they have a warrant for your arrest. Their uniforms look real, their badges shine, and their voices sound official. But what if I told you they're complete fakes? And here's the twist. They picked the wrong man to mess with. Because the man behind that door isn't just anyone. He's one of the FBI's most highly trained agents. And tonight, those imposters are about to learn the most dangerous lesson of their lives. The loud pounding on the door shook the quiet evening in Marcus Johnson's neighborhood. The sound echoed through his house like a warning drum. Marcus froze for a moment. His sharp eyes locked on the door as if he could see through it. Something wasn't right. Marcus was no stranger to law enforcement. After all, he was law enforcement. For years, he had worked as one of the FBI's most skilled field agents, trained to spot danger before anyone else even noticed it. But in all his years of service, he had never once heard of the so-called How Police. The name itself sounded strange, like something hastily made up by amateurs. Cautiously, Marcus moved closer and peered through the peephole. His instincts screamed louder the longer he looked. Outside, 3 men stood in black tactical gear, their helmets pulled low and badges swinging from chains around their necks. To a regular civilian, they might have looked official, intimidating, and powerful. But Marcus's trained eyes immediately caught the details. The badges were slightly crooked, the lettering off-center, and the shine too dull. Their bulletproof vests looked cheaply made, not like the high-grade gear real officers used. Even the police patches stitched onto their uniforms were frayed and peeling at the corners. "Open the door now! We have a warrant for your arrest," one of the men barked, his voice trying to carry authority but cracking at the edges. Marcus stepped back, his mind racing. His pulse was steady, controlled. He wasn't afraid. He was calculating. These weren't real cops. These were imposters. But what they didn't know was that they had just chosen the worst possible target. Because Marcus wasn't just some random black man living in the neighborhood. He wasn't some helpless victim they could scare into obedience. He was one of the FBI's most highly trained field agents. A man who had spent years dismantling organized crime networks, infiltrating drug cartels, and going undercover in some of the most dangerous places in the country. And right now, staring at those fake officers outside his door, Marcus knew one thing for certain. Tonight, they had picked the wrong house and the wrong man. Marcus didn't panic. His breathing stayed steady, his hands calm, his mind razor-sharp. Instead of reacting recklessly, he moved with quiet precision. He walked over to his desk, slid open the drawer, and pressed a small button hidden underneath. Instantly, his home surveillance system came alive, activating multiple cameras and microphones placed strategically around the house. Within seconds, everything was recording and automatically streaming to the FBI's secure server. If these men really thought they could impersonate law enforcement, Marcus was going to make sure the evidence that exposed them would be undeniable. "How Police, last warning! Open the door or we'll break it down!" One of the fake officers shouted, his voice straining as he raised a heavy battering ram. Marcus smirked, almost amused. Amateurs, he thought. Real officers didn't waste time throwing out cheap threats. Their language was precise, professional, and deliberate. These men, on the other hand, sounded like actors in a bad play. The way they stood, the way they held their weapons, everything about them, screamed untrained thugs trying to look official. But instead of immediately shutting them down, Marcus decided to play along, to see just how far they would go. He carefully unlatched his door, leaving the chain lock firmly in place, and cracked it open just a sliver. "How Police? Never heard of you guys." "Who sent you?" Marcus asked, his voice calm, measured, almost taunting. The leader shoved a crumpled piece of paper through the gap. "Here's your warrant," he barked. Marcus unfolded it quickly, scanning the page. His suspicions were instantly confirmed. The so-called warrant was a joke, spelling errors, a fake judge's signature, even the wrong date at the top. It was nothing more than a sloppy printout, the kind a criminal might put together on an old computer. "You're under arrest for fraud and identity theft," the man snapped, trying to sound convincing. Marcus nearly laughed out loud. The irony was almost too much. Here they were, accusing him of fraud, while their entire act was a fraud in itself. They had no idea they weren't standing across from some Random black man they could bully. No, they were standing face to face with a man who had infiltrated drug cartels, dismantled international fraud rings, and trained SWAT teams in tactical combat. He calmly shut the door and locked it tight. Then, with practiced movements, Marcus pressed another hidden switch. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing his FBI tactical gear. In less than 2 minutes, he transformed from a regular homeowner into a fully geared federal agent, armored with a bulletproof vest, a loaded sidearm, and an encrypted radio linked directly to headquarters. Tonight, the hunters didn't realize it yet, but they had just become the prey. The fake cops started ramming the door, each strike louder and more desperate than the last. But Marcus was already 3 steps ahead. Calmly, he reached for another hidden switch beneath the bookshelf. With a low mechanical hum, steel security shutters slid down over the windows and reinforced plates, locked into the doorframe. His house instantly transformed from an ordinary suburban home into a fortified stronghold. "All right, boys," Marcus muttered under his breath, as he slid a magazine into his weapon and cocked it into place. "Let's see how tough you really are." On the other side of the door, the imposters shouted, cursed, and pushed harder until finally, the lock gave way with a splintering crack. They stormed inside, their fake badges swinging, shouting commands like they owned the room. But what they found stopped them cold. Instead of a terrified man cowering in the corner, Marcus stood tall in the center of the living room. His FBI badge glinted under the ceiling light, his tactical vest snug across his chest, and his weapon held steady in his grip. The sheer authority in his stance made the room feel smaller. "Drop your weapons, FBI." Marcus's voice boomed with such force that it cut through their bravado like a blade. The men froze. For one split second, they thought it was some kind of bluff. But then they saw the details, the real badge, the professional gear, the unwavering stance of a man who had been in 100 standoffs before. Their fake confidence began to crumble right in front of him. "You think you can walk into my house with fake badges and phony warrants?" Marcus barked, his tone sharp as steel. "You just committed a federal crime, impersonating law enforcement and attempting a false arrest. Do you know what that means?" Before they could answer, Marcus moved, fast. With the speed of a trained agent, he lunged at the first man, knocking the weapon from his hands and twisting his arm behind his back. The man screamed as Marcus slammed him to the floor and cuffed him in seconds. The second swung wildly, but Marcus blocked, drove a sharp kick into his chest, and pinned him against the wall. The third man panicked and bolted toward the door, but he was too late. Marcus had already called for backup. Within minutes, the rumble of black FBI SUVs filled the street. Armed agents poured into the house, shouting commands as they swarmed the scene. The imposters were dragged to the floor, handcuffed and stripped of their fake gear. Their operation had collapsed in a matter of minutes, leaving them stunned, humiliated, and utterly defeated. For them, the game was over. As the imposters were dragged out of the house in handcuffs, the tension finally broke. The men who just minutes ago had been shouting with false authority now looked like children caught in the act of lying. One of them, trembling with fear, couldn't hold it in any longer. "We thought you were just some guy. We didn't know you were FBI," he stammered, his voice shaking. Marcus stepped forward, his eyes sharp and unblinking. He leaned in close enough that the man could feel the weight of his words. "That's the problem. You thought wrong, and now you'll spend years behind bars for trying to play pretend with the wrong man." The other agents chuckled, shaking their heads in disbelief. One of them clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "They really tried to arrest you? That's bold." But Marcus didn't laugh. His mind was already 3 steps ahead, connecting dots the others didn't see. This wasn't just some random group of thugs in fake uniforms. No, this was a test run. A trial operation by a bigger network that preyed on unsuspecting citizens, especially vulnerable minorities, tricking them into false arrests, fake fines, and worse. Tonight, the scam had failed spectacularly, but Marcus couldn't shake the question. How many innocent people had already been fooled? How many families had been shaken by these frauds before they got this far? Before leaving, Marcus turned toward one of his surveillance cameras. The red recording light blinked steadily. He knew this footage would go far beyond evidence in a courtroom. It could become a message. Straightening his shoulders, he spoke clearly, his voice calm but powerful. "Let this be a reminder. Always know your rights. Always ask questions. And if something feels off about so-called law enforcement, it probably is. Because real justice isn't about fear, it's about truth. That message, along with the footage of the imposters being exposed, spread across social media within hours. Millions watched as fake officers were humiliated in handcuffs, their lies stripped away under the weight of real law enforcement. The video went viral, sparking nationwide discussions about scams, fraud, and the importance of questioning authority when something feels wrong. As for Marcus, he didn't bask in the fame or the praise. He quietly returned to his life, sharpening his awareness, knowing that deception never sleeps. For him, the mission wasn't over. It never truly is. Because in a world where truth and lies constantly battle, Marcus Johnson understood one thing better than anyone else. Vigilance is the real armor, and that's how a group of fake cops learned the hard way. You don't play pretend with the FBI. If you enjoyed this story and want more jaw-dropping twists like this, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that keeps you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and stay tuned.